Here's what's coming up on today's show.
You get a lot of second chances in life, but not to raise your kids. And I figured as soon as my son was born, I got 18 years to get this right. And if I don't, it's going to be tough to rekindle that.
This is the Balanced Growth Show with Dr. Travis Perry, helping successful business professionals like you achieve balance in their lives.
Welcome to another episode of the Balanced Growth Show. I am your host, Dr. Travis Perry. Today, we are joined by John Bernatovicz. And John is a family guy. He puts his family first. He is proud to be Will's and Mal's dad and Emily's husband. Outside of the home, he's an entrepreneur, keynote speaker, podcast host, and author. In the spring of 2023, his book, HR Like a Boss, will be published by SHRM Books. In his spare time, he coaches soccer and golf and competes in amateur golf tournaments and roots for all Cleveland sports teams. We won't hold that against him, and we'll welcome here to the show. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Travis. Appreciate it. We can talk sports another time. Sometimes hard to root for Cleveland sports, but it's in my blood. I don't know any different.
I know. The sports are so exactly that way. It's very culture, very blood, very tradition-oriented, isn't it? It's all about tradition. So I love that.
So much is. Yeah. Times I went with my dad telling me times he went with his dad.
Yep.
Now I'm taking my son. It's pretty cool. My daughter's awesome. Into some of the sports. My wife, actually, the cool part for me is she's a bigger sports nut than I am as far as watching. I'll come home and the golf will be on or some basketball game will be on, and she just loves to watch it. I'd sit up and join her. It's totally cool.
Yeah, if that's the culture of your family, it's hard to break away from it. And I totally get it. We were a soccer, volleyball family growing up. And, you know, there's something about the various sports that can bring you together. They really can. They can really do that. So that's fantastic to hear that's part of your family culture. Well, John, tell us your story. How did you become the HR Like a Boss guy? What is, tell us a little bit about your story behind all this.
Well, I'll start in the beginning. I'm a proud graduate of Kent State University. I played Division I golf at Kent State, graduated, went and worked for a company called ADP, large HR payroll outsourcing organization. 10 years into that, got the entrepreneurial itch and left and got into the staffing space. And in 2010, I merged those two experiences, working for ADP selling technology as well as working in the staffing industry to develop Willory, which is named after my kids, Will and Mallory. They are my true north, my inspiration for it, my motivation. Needed to be reminded of that on occasion while you're working those long hours as an entrepreneur. And in the midst of growing and building my business, I was fortunate to hire a really savvy and progressive director of marketing, Bridget Klein, give her a shout out. And she really encouraged me to take on the founder's personal brand, knowing that there would only be one founder of Willory, one person that had kids that were named after the firm, and really using that as a amplification of the business that we built, one great client experience at a time. And in 2017, I was asked to do a presentation at a local SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management regional conference, and it'd be about 800 people in attendance. And they had a breakout session. Ours was very, very well attended based upon the title of the presentation, which was HR Like a Boss. I had an idea about what that would be like based upon 20 years of working with and calling on and supporting HR professionals. I saw some really amazingly awesome HR like a boss. I also saw the opposite, some really poor HR and the impact on the culture, on the people, on the business, and in those communities. And I was inspired to give a presentation with that title. People loved it, sellout crowds in subsequent events. And my director of marketing also encouraged me to, when I thought of writing a book, which was really inspired by my parents passing away around 13 months apart from one another, I really wanted to look and dissect what have I not done in my personal and professional career and make sure to get those things done. And writing a book was one of them. And then my marketing director, as I was talking about my aspiration to write a book, she said, "You've got the outline for HR Like a Boss. It was really well received. I think the title makes sense. Why don't we write that book?" And lo and behold, started doing that. and developed a podcast out of it, probably not too dissimilar to how you've developed yours, Dr. Travis, which is really great, and appreciate what you're doing around balanced growth. And 2.5 years later, book got picked up by Sherm Books, which is an arm of the largest society of human resources in the world. And we're looking to have it launched in the summer of 2023. And I cannot wait to give my first autograph, because my daughter doesn't believe that someone's going to want Dad's autograph for signing a book. I just want one person. That's it. No, I don't need anybody else. No long lines, just one person. I'm going to take a picture with him and tell Mallory that Dad did it. He got an autograph. He was asked to give an autograph.
So awesome. So fun. What I get from you and even our pre-show interview is just that you have such love and desire to be balanced. That's a big priority for you. I didn't know about your parents passing, and my condolences your way. And I also know, writing this book, Achieving Balance, this was really all generated 10 years ago after my father passed away suddenly. And I started kind of looking into stress and balance and all of these questions I had to try to answer that. And then it's really my give back, giving this back to the community. So that's interesting that really spurred it on for you. There's a lot of things that we share and overlap. One thing I want to kind of emphasize and ask is, why is balance so important to you? You make it a big priority. It's a big deal. There's a lot of people out there listening who struggle because they think they can't have growth if they sacrifice for balance. Somehow they think in their mind, it's not possible. I can't grow my business and be balanced. But you're living proof that it works. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about why it's important to you.
I had an incredible experience playing competitive golf in college. One of the most awesome things it did, it afforded me a chance to travel throughout the United States and play high-level golf with some of the best players, people like Tiger Woods and Justin Leonard and Phil Mickelson, names people may recognize. And I realized in the midst of doing that, golf was really an amazing platform for me, but the travel and being away from home and the grind of that got old. And I was young. I was where it shouldn't have gotten old for me when I was 20, 21, 22 years old. And I realized, well, what do I really want? And it came down to, I wanted to start a family. I wanted to get married. I wanted to own my own business. Being around golf, there's a lot of business owners, at least that I played golf with when I was younger, who could golf at 2:00 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. And I wondered, well, how are you able to do that? And I realized they spent 30 years building a business that could now work on their behalf and all the effort they put into it. And long story short, I worked in the corporate environment after my Division I golf. I traveled with that job. I had the stress of having a full-time corporate America job, which I really love and know a lot of people that work in that space and totally get it and understand why it's important. But I realized that I couldn't control as much as I wanted to and the things that were most important to me, which was my time and my availability to my family. And I wanted to start a family. I wanted to be present for my kids. And I heard a lot of people tell me, your life will never be the same once you have children. Time will go by so fast. And I came up with a third thing. You get a lot of second chances in life, but not to raise your kids. And I figured as soon as my son was born, I got 18 years to get this right. And if I don't, it's going to be tough to rekindle that. And I built my business virtually in 2010. Like, we were virtual on day one, not a result of the impact of COVID. And I did it because I wanted to be available to my wife while we were raising our children together. And I wanted to not miss first steps, first bike rides, skin knee, lunches with my kids. And I was able to do that. Now for me, I have sometimes a short attention span. I can get obsessed a little bit with my phone and things. We have a rule in my house now. If Dad's on his phone too much, you just look him in the eye and say, Dad, you're on your phone too much. And it's an immediate, get off your phone, pay attention to your kids. And I try my best from 5:30 till they go to bed at 10 that I'm giving them as much of my attention as I can. I can do a much better job. Don't get me wrong. I could do that better, but I'm very intentional about that part and putting my family first with my faith has given me a guidepost in my life that if I'm making decisions that faith and family are the priority for, I don't think I can make a bad choice.
There's a lot of great things you said, and amen to all of that. I love, that your highest priority really is your family and your biggest motivator. I've studied human development and families for years, and I know this is also true for most people listening. Those who are married and have children, or if they're not married, there is still the desire to have a spouse, a lifelong partner, and to propagate our species. It is the number one motivator that drives us and towards our goals. So I love that you put your money where your mouth is and you created your business on purpose. You created it so you could have that balance. We're in a world where it seems like everybody got slammed into the virtual workspace. I've been doing this since 2012. I've been on Zoom. I've seen it change and morph since 2012. Wish I had bought stock in it, but that's a different story. Everybody's 2020 predictions were off. But that said, I feel you. There is a lot of great things you can do virtually to grow and scale. So let's go there. As we talked in the pre-show, I asked you, what have you really done to grow and scale this? And I didn't know that you were doing this mostly virtual. So that's an aspect of it. Let's go a little bit deeper. What are you doing on the offensive side, on the growth side, the sales and marketing side, to really get your brand out there, get your business to where it needs to be, grow and scale it while working virtually?
Most important thing I realized in scaling our business was prioritizing our leadership team and their development and ensuring that we're all aligned and we know what our role is and we do it really well. Hiring to some of the weaknesses I have inside of my business acumen and skill set. And over the last few years, Dr. Travis, I really have tried my best to stay in that CEO lane and hire really talented people in our sales and marketing department. I've given a plug already to Bridget. I'll give one to Bob Haas, 12-year vet for Willory, which we're only not even 13 years old, employee number one, now director of sales. And we elevated him into a leadership role. And it gives me a chance to not have to have my eye on too many things, get people that are passionate and caring about growing and driving our business. That was a critical transformation for me, to relinquish sales leadership and support a longtime friend and colleague of mine, Bob, in his development and maturation. We also have done a major investment in marketing, not only physical dollars in our social media platforms and through Google and whatnot, but I've spent a lot of time developing content around HR Like a Boss, which we then promote and propagate and put out into the universe in regards to what does it take to do amazingly awesome HR. That has been a major investment of time, energy, and effort. The really cool part about it, which I get the sense you feel the same way, I love to do it. It doesn't feel like work when I'm podcast hosting or when I'm writing or I'm doing a presentation. That feels like easy money in the spirit of it. And all that opportunity gives me a chance to be the face of the firm, to be the founder of the business, and to put myself out there. And as a result of that, and my genuineness and my authenticity, people seem to gravitate to what it is we're doing and potentially want to have a conversation about staffing needs they may have or consultative support they need in HR. It's just an anecdotal byproduct of putting yourself out there in a way that's genuine, sincere, and honest. And I'm really trying to help people. My mission is to make an impact. I want to make a difference in my kids' lives, in my wife's life, and my family's life, and my friends, and my podcast friends like you, Dr. Travis. I just want to make a difference. I want people to remember me in a way that seemed like a good guy who had the right intentions and was spirited in the right direction. And I hope that inspires one person or two, and that they do the same thing and make a difference in their kids' lives and in their colleagues' lives and in their spouses' lives. I'm a definite lead by example person. And probably the greatest outcome of that so far is I have a son who wants to start a landscape and design company at 15 years old. He's been doing that, I'll call it freelance, for a few years with neighboring friends in our own yard. And my daughter wants to be an artist, and she wants to sell her paintings and art for money. And I've got two little entrepreneurs, maybe not so little at some point, that they saw dad doing what he was doing. And that's the biggest compliment they could give me by far.
Yep. So good. I have a group that we manage called Rebel Dads. I've actually never mentioned this on this podcast, but it stands for Remote Entrepreneur Balanced Leaders. And we're all a bunch of dads. We need support and just help each other. And, you seem like a rebel dad to me. You're this guy who leads by example, balanced, he's remote. You're definitely an entrepreneur, and your kids pick up on this. They notice it. My boys and my girls, they're always like, what can I do? I'm going to create a camp. I'm going to sell, lemonade, or I'm going to do popcorn because it's different than lemonade. Like, they're always doing something new, and it's fun to watch their expression. It's fun to see what they're, about. And it's because of your example. So great job, Dad. That's fantastic to hear. And you're right. Like that's the best compliment, is seeing their growth and development. What do you see as your own personal biggest struggle as you're growing and scaling this business to keep your balance? We all have an Achilles heel, and maybe it is the phone, as you mentioned earlier. What might it be? What tendency? What issue? So I know our audience would love to hear, like, what is it that you're actually struggling with? Because they can relate, and they oftentimes can get some advice or some, at least just understanding that someone else is dealing with this as well. But as you're growing, as you're really building your business virtually, what are two of the major issues that you're having, would you say?
Well, first off, I mentioned a little bit of it before. I have a short attention span. I tend to get distracted very easily. I, as a result, have 2 other businesses that I own, and that is a blessing and a curse in that I do not get complacent. I'm always trying to get better, trying to improve, trying to develop, make things better, cheaper, faster from a business standpoint. And with that, it's like I said earlier, it's hard to turn that off at 5:30. I try to be dad, but I'm still entrepreneur, John, owner, CEO. And that's why I told my kids, if I'm not giving you my attention, or I seem too glazed over on my phone, you have full accountability to tell dad, hey, cut it out. That part has been a challenge for me my entire adult life. And probably as a kid, I don't remember that part as much, but that definitely is something. And also just having the right amount of patience with the appropriate growth of my business. I see so much potential in it. We've seen some really solid growth in it. Sometimes things don't go exactly the way that I want to, and I have to be balanced in my patience and trustworthy of my leadership team. I probably got the lack of that from my father, who always used to say, patience is a virtue I do not have, and he was proud of that. But that impacted the people he worked with, I know, and himself, and I've really tried to stay focused and patient. And as an entrepreneur, the stage I am in my life, that can be hard. And all I do, Dr. Travis, is I'm super self-aware of those moments. And I have guardrails with my kids on the attention span. With Dad, you're on your phone too much. And I have a coach that I work with all the time in regards to staying balanced, in regards to my patience and giving my team the autonomy to do their job and do it well.
I think there's a correlation between the shiny object syndrome, the keeping attention and focusing, and the patience. Most of us who are business owners, entrepreneurs, started the business, right? We're the founders and the drivers. We're visionaries. We want to get stuff done yesterday. So it's frustrating, and it sets us back when we set our mind to it and it's not done, right? We want to see this to fruition. So that patience aspect, I feel you, brother. I do. I absolutely do. And, I talk about in Achieving Balance, in our book, Achieving Balance, we talk about, it's all about the systems. What are your goals? What is your dreams? And then what's the system to help make that magic happen? How has having a coach helped you to put those things in place? You mentioned it. Hey, that's been one of the things that's helped you. And we talk about this a little bit on the show. Obviously, I coach. I help people with balance, but this is fantastic hearing it from you, knowing where your Achilles heels are. What has coaching done for you to help keep that balance and grow your business?
I say this all the time. As the CEO of my business and founder and entrepreneur, I get along with my boss really well. We see eye to eye on every single issue because that's me, and that's kind of flip it that I say it. In that, most entrepreneurs are really bad at being held accountable. They want to be in charge because they don't want to be held responsible. They want to hold other people responsible. I see that a lot in my networking and in talking with other, let's say, HR professionals that work with CEOs that are maybe wired that way. And I recognize, again, by taking this, if I'm going to talk the talk, I need to walk the walk. I want my team to be held accountable. It's one of our core values in our business. And I realized with my coach that it was something that I needed to exemplify that behavior to my team. And I have an open, honest, transparent relationship with my coach. And we have some very intense conversations at times that are, I have to become incredibly vulnerable and share how I'm feeling about various things. And I've really been encouraged to just try to get a little bit better at what I'm trying to do every single day, never trying to compare myself to some other leader or some other CEO or Dr. Travis, he's got this or this CEO or whatever you may aspire to. It's not really fair to do that to yourself. It's most fair to say, how was I yesterday? Am I a little bit better than I was yesterday today? And if I compound that, like is described in Atomic Habits by James Clear, that type of compound interest in my own development can make a world of difference. I'll give you an example of one I know that has gotten better. I do a lot of on-screen presentations and in-person keynote speaking engagements. And I just watched our very first Willory video from, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago. And I looked like a deer in the headlights. I looked so nervous. They had to show me because I'm the founder of the firm, but I'll never forget the gentleman that coordinated with me said, we have to do a retake. I'm like, for the whole firm? Because we had 8 or 10 people on the firm that did it. And he said, no, just with you. What do you mean? You look like a stiff. So now I work on my charisma in front of a camera and my ability to connect with people, not just with my words, but with my emotions and my body language and whatnot. And I've had to work at it. I worked at it really hard. I had to watch. I had to be very vulnerable and say, oh my gosh, I can't even listen to myself. How's someone else going to listen to me? And I've changed. I've evolved. I've gotten better. I've gotten coaching. I've made myself very uncomfortable at times in doing it. And as a result, I've gotten better.
And that's the value of coaching, right? You're not my coaching client. We don't have a relationship. I didn't even talk to you before today. One of our team members reached out to you to have you on the show. Coaching in general is, can be quite honestly invaluable. It's where I have been able to learn so many things about myself. I've had epiphanies happen because I've paid the price to have a coach and a mentor help me through a process. And so I really thank you for your kind and your open conversation about how important that's been for your balanced growth. I think we need to hear that. We need to know that having this accountability has been vital for you. Someone who, quite honestly, on the outset looks like, hey, he's just naturally balanced, naturally, has this growth potential. I've often found that behind someone who seems that natural, it's never been an overnight success. They've been changing and growing for years and years and years. And as you mentioned, the idea that, quit comparing ourselves to other people, because we're comparing their best to our worst. And that's never good for anyone. So I really appreciate you bringing this up today. And I know you do coaching. I know you help firms, and you've written this book, HR Like a Boss. So we know these are definite issues that come up almost on every single show about how do we delegate? How do we create better cultures of balance inside our own businesses? And I'm obviously on a mission to help change this in society in general, starting, with the business culture. So let's talk about this a little bit. What would you say are a couple of the biggest issues that you found as you've done research for this book that other business owners struggle with, coaches, trainers, financial advisors, whatever the industry? What are they struggling with when it comes to being a great leader?
Yeah. First thing, I'll just add one comment on the coaching, and again, plug to Dr. Travis and those that are doing this. This is not on purpose. He's not paying me for this. If everyone's listening, I promise you, is you have to want to be coached. You hear a lot of time in sports, you get a player that comes and joins the team and ends up leaving the team because he or she didn't want to be coached, didn't want to fit into the way that the team was run. And in my opinion, the best players on the best teams have to be the ones that are most accountable to themselves. I had a gentleman once on my podcast, an amazing story, Alan Stein Jr. He coached through the Nike organization, players like Steph Curry and Kobe Bryant and Kevin Durant. And he got to interview and talk to them. And he said Kobe Bryant was the most difficult on himself. You saw him be rabid on other players that weren't doing their jobs the way he thought, but he was worse on himself in regards to having such a high level of accountability. And I'm not comparing anyone to Kobe Bryant in that regard. I'm just suggesting his level of expectation in that particular sense was high. In the spirit of culture and what I learned, the number one thing I learned in writing my book is purpose. Having a purposeful commitment in your business as the CEO and leader is the number one priority that you have to set the standard inside of your firm. In our business, it's to empower people. And we've aligned our charitable partner for empowering people to Youth Opportunities Unlimited. It's a local charity in Cleveland. As a matter of fact, later on this month, I'm going to speak to 25 of their students about what payroll and HR means inside of a business. And we're going to talk about FICA and state tax and all that stuff. Probably pretty boring. I'll try to make it not boring. But if you don't have a purpose as a leader and your business doesn't have that same juice in it, you're going to struggle to get people to collaborate and unify under that same mission and purpose. That's number one. Number two, you have to be centric to your people. You have to put your people first in your business. And if you don't do that, then someone else will. And as a result of that, you'll have high turnover or you'll struggle to develop a leadership team. You as the leader have to believe in that. And then in that, having the right people, you have to have a set of core values that are your true north, your guidepost, your boundary of your business. And those need to be clear. And in our firm, we recognize them on a weekly basis to our team members that exemplify them. And those that step outside of those bounds, we have those conversations to ensure they understand the importance of it. And then lastly, out of all that, you have to have a business. If you're in a for-profit business, your entire team needs to understand how your business does and does not make money. Without my firm, Willory, and I'm the keeper of the keys to that as the CEO, we don't have this culture. We don't have this purpose. We can't do these things for Youth Opportunities Unlimited. We can't provide these great services to our clients. And a business needs to be profitable in order to do that. And that part has been a migration for me and my firm, and one that I think by being open and honest about the financial position of the business has attracted people into the firm as opposed to scared them off. I know a lot of owners are like, I don't want to tell people how much money we are not making. And I just feel like that's a missed opportunity in giving your people another opportunity for growth and development to understand what it takes to run a profitable business. Maybe they may do the same thing themselves down the road, or maybe they might do that at home to run a profitable home, make more than we spend, save more than you can afford, and doing all those things consistently. And it's those characteristics of being profitable, being people-centric, having a purposeful commitment. Those are the pillars inside of doing HR like a boss and inside of a business. And HR needs to drive that if they don't see it, in my opinion. I think that they have the biggest impact inside of any functional area in a business than anyone else. Not sales, not marketing, not operations, not IT. No offense to those folks. HR keeps the people, manages and curates the culture, and they should be that advisor and advocate to their CEO on how important purpose and people and profitability is inside of a business. Having that balance, it's just not the CEO's job to do that. It's just not the founder's job to do that. We all have to get on that bus and do that together.
Yeah, great. I mean, it is about this culture, purpose, people-centric, boundaries, profitability. I love that you're making these points and bringing these out to companies is, I mean, we could spend an hour on each one, right? Easy. We'll have to have you back. But in the meantime, I know your book is coming out. Where can our listeners go to get more of your stuff, of your book, and hear about what you're doing in the future?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Travis. First off, you can go to my personal website, johnbernatovicz.com. Hopefully, Travis you and your team can get that somewhere in the show notes to make it easy. I won't quiz anyone on how to spell Bernatovicz if you generally get there. A little easier to find us also on Willory.com, WILLORY.com. And Willory and myself are all over social media, especially LinkedIn for myself from a business platform perspective. Those would be the easiest ways to find out about me and my travels and my book. And you also at some point can go to hrlikeaboss.com. That'll be available as a landing page. And once the book is released, you'll have a chance to purchase it, as well as we've got a full training course associated with it. If you want to do amazingly awesome HR, you can be a part of that. We also launched this really cool thing called through Redbubble for selling merchandise. It's really cool if you don't have that. We can sell HR Like a Boss gear. It doesn't cost us anything to do it. We don't have to do anything other than get their royalty they send us on the stuff, which is pretty cool. And we're also building a community around those that want to do amazingly awesome HR. And I did this for a reason because I want to make a difference, like I said before, and I'm building out a franchise around HR Like a Boss, and I hope people gravitate to it and it makes a difference in their lives.
Fantastic. Definitely connect with John, and we'll have all those links there in the show notes. Appreciate your time today, John. Appreciate you and your content, your wisdom, and quite honestly, just if anything, your example of being a balanced developer, someone who's growing, keeping his balance, keeping his priorities in order. Thank you for being a guest on the show.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. If you love this, please go to Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening to your podcast. Rate this podcast 5 stars. Leave us a review. We love to hear from you, our listeners, and we love providing this type of content in the future. So please do so. We love it, and we're grateful that you've been here listening along. And until next time, remember, live life on purpose.